several other lots, so it's not just the 3 we're looking at. It was like a row of 8 or 9. And was identified as an area with the potential to be aggregated and redevelopment with a single access point off 13 Mile Road. It was identified for single-family housing in that special study. The goals in the master plan for this area were to maintain the one-family residential use character, the road frontage on large lots, encourage assembly of parcels and development of one-family lots based on the concept plan. The concept plan showed a single access point with a kind of T-shaped road that went out in 2 directions. Protect the natural features of the area, hillside and trees. And we do have some policies that were set under that special study area as well, following the conceptual plan under RA1 zoning. Keeping short cul-de-sacs, encouraging names of developments that are similar in order to establish a unified identity for the area. The Word document went kind of crazy with the bullet points here. So some of these are actually 1 bullet, but it's got 2 bullet points. Allowing flexibility in application of city standards, encouraging flexibility in building setbacks, permitting water retention in open space, considering the cluster option when at least one side of the property in question borders on a use that's other than one family, and maintaining density as planned and zoned at 1.8 dwelling units per acre. Moving on to the dimensional standards, it does look like they wouldn't be seeking relief from any of those. The building height does need to be provided to verify that, but they've got the setbacks that would be required in the underlying zoning. They are looking for adjustments to parking. So they have a requirement of 200. Their total that they've got on the plan is 169. So that would be a bit of relief sought from ordinance standards. I've given you the requirements of the RA1 district versus what is proposed. And as you can see, all those standards are met there, building height being the exception because we don't know the exact height. But when we look at what relief they're seeking from ordinance standards as part of this PUD, we have a pretty short list of 2 items. One is to permit multifamily at the RC3 density, and the other is to permit a reduction in parking from 200 spaces to 169. There could be other things that come out in a final plan, but nevertheless, those are the 2 things we see right now. If you have any questions for me.
Any questions for our consultant or staff? Joe?
Yes. Was the term you used low-income housing?
Affordable.
Affordable housing.
That was the term I used.
What's the definition of affordable housing?
Well,
I'm sorry, I did read online, but I never got the hard copy. I don't have it in front of myself, so if I'm asking information that's right in front of everybody, I apologize.
do you have that? If not, we'll get it from the proponent when they come up.
Yeah, we can allow the applicant to, because the term affordable housing does have a federal meaning, but we'll let them speak to what the meaning is in the context.
I asked that question first because of my second question. My second question was how much affordable housing do we have in this city by that definition? But I don't know what that definition is, so there's no point in asking the second question.
So we'll follow up on the second question once we get the answer to the first question.
Okay. I have another question.
Okay, one more question.
The other question is, it seems to me that we ask for these traffic studies frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Almost never is there any impact from these traffic studies. Perhaps it's a discussion for another time, but I would like to know what the criteria is for requiring a traffic study, and I would like to know how much a traffic study costs the developer. And as I say, if you want to answer that at another time, that's fine.
Let's pick up on that on our
Okay.
Steve.
Joe, with regards to the zoning of RC3, could this project be done other than the parking under zoning of RC3? Is there any other issues that this couldn't be done via a rezoning, in your opinion?
Not that I saw. The parking was the one other set of relief from ordinance standards. And I will let the applicant speak to why they felt that the PUD was a more appropriate approach.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, the applicant's here. Please come forward, introduce yourself, your address, and make your pitch. Don't be shy. We want to get out of here early at a reasonable time.
I don't have my glasses, I can't read it.
Quite a large influx of new Americans that have come over as refugees. So we created an organization to help serve the new American population. Initially, in 2011, we served about 400 people. Today, it's more than 40,000 individuals annually from 48 different countries of origin. So while we bear the name Chaldean, we open and are serving many. This is our second foray into affordable housing. We are under construction in Sterling Heights. We have a need to build up to 1,000 units for people seeking long-term affordable housing. And by affordable, they must meet certain average medium income. So in order to qualify for housing like this, you must be at 60% or below the average medium income to qualify for affordable housing. There's many different forms of affordable housing. I don't mean to take a long time, and there's many different options, but affordable housing in this case, because it's a product of the Michigan State Housing Development Authority and perhaps even a loan from HUD, for the duration of the loan, we cannot raise rents, as those people who are qualified to be in those apartments will be paying a certain amount. There's no vouchers or any additional subsidies. It's just rent control for people who meet the average median income. And so in Sterling Heights, we are under construction of a 135-unit development. We've been great partners with the county and the city there. They've invested some $5 million in streetscape improvements and infrastructure improvements, and we're helping redevelop a neglected area in the city there. And similar to Sterling Heights, which there's about a 25% Chaldean population there, there's a large Chaldean population here in Oakland County as well. And so we are trying to address that. This housing development won't be open just to Chaldeans. And again, part of our mission is to provide health and human services, access to health care, and then newly affordable housing. So with me is the great team from Alexander Bogarts, and they are the lead architects. They could provide some additional insight on the project and the design. And when the question came up with the PUD, I think in all of our discussions with the city, it was recommended that we go through the PUD process.
Joe, question for Mr. Manna?
Yes, so my issue, where I'm coming from overall, is us requiring too much parking. Okay, that's where I'm coming from.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Huh?
Us requiring too much?
Us, this city, requiring too much parking for your development.
Sure.
Okay? That's where I'm coming from.
Sure.
So when you say low income means that the residents have to earn less than 60%, I believe it was probably median income.
Yes, average median income.
What is that figure?
That's a good question. It's based on data, so that number changes. I have it somewhere. I'll get it for you before the end of the meeting.
But it's,
$50,000.
so it's, they make less than $50,000,
Correct.
okay? So there is a new book out called Paving Paradise about parking. And I listened to an interview with the author, and the author said, and I believe this is also in the book, that one of the institutional things that's in the way of low-income housing is the requirement of parking standards, because low-income housing tends to have people living in it who have fewer cars than your average household, okay? So therefore, because this is a low-income development, it seems to me that it should have lower parking requirements than our standard, and that it would affect traffic less than a normal development of that type. And that is where I was coming from. Okay?
Yep, I
So,
agree. Yeah.
I actually made a statement, didn't ask much of a question there, but thank you.
If I may, sir, just to that, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So for this discussion, this application, we're talking about affordable housing, not low, affordable. So
We're talking about affordable, affordable housing.
affordable. So
Are you going to have lower income people living? What's the requirement for the number of lower
Yeah,
income
it's just,
people?
it's an affordable housing project that they have to meet certain income requirements.
So, Mr. Chair, can I
yes, Tom?
just want to be clear that
I get,
we're at a qualification stage for a PUD.
I'm sorry, he's talking. I can't hear him. Go ahead.
We're at a qualification stage for a PUD. The land use issue that you're going to be deciding doesn't really have a place in it for how they're going to finance and who they're going to rent or sell to. And I guess I just want to make sure, I actually see where you're going, Mr. Manti, on the parking thing, and I think that actually kind of relates, but I think generally, who's going to be in the property is not what your focus tonight is going to be. It's going to be on the land use and the units and the density and things like that. I just want to make sure we're staying on track with that.
I now understand this, but this is the first time in my recollection of 20 years of somebody bringing up anything to do with low income or affordable. And this is all
fitting
new
it to parking
territory
was
for me.
pretty good,
Okay? I appreciate it.
So thank you, Tom, and I think, thank you, Joe. I think the point goes to the issue of required parking versus what's provided and the rationale.
One shortcoming they have, I
and
don't
the
think is a
ration-
major
and-
shortcoming.
And the rationale for an argument to say reduced parking makes sense in this application. Good point. So Tanji and then Danielle?
Well, I just wanted to get the understanding of that it wasn't low income. The way it's worded, it's affordable. Affordable would be in their eyes of what's affordable. So I just wanted to make sure we kind of answered the question before but I don't know if this is appropriate, but I just wanted to find out, is this strictly for the Chaldean community? Since we're very in a diverse.
I think he mentioned earlier it's for.
Early for that?
For anyone.
Okay.
Danielle?
How did you arrive at the 169 as opposed to any other number if you need a reduction in parking?
What are you referencing?
It's, the relief sought from ordinance standards is a reduction in parking from 200 spaces to 169. How did you arrive at the 169? Perhaps it could be more or less, I don't know.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Mark Abernathy with Alexander Bogarts Architects. Alex Bogarts and Xander are here as well to answer any questions I might not be able to answer. That was going to be one of my points of discussion from the standpoint of the project. Parking for this type of a project, typically industry standards are 1.7 to 1.8 parking spaces per unit. Sometimes we look at one parking space for a one-bedroom, two parking spaces for a two-bedroom. Those are industry standards. Commission member Manti mentioned parking, too much parking. We agree with that. In almost every community we go into, we talk about this. And most of the time, too much parking is required. So with what was discussed by Martin and industry standards, that's why, one of the reasons when we met with staff, we talked about the PUD. That's one of 4 that I'll be discussing. But so we're right in that wheelhouse of 1.7 with our parking.
Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, can you elaborate on why it's a PUD versus just going for an RC3 rezone? What? Yeah.
Can I go through my presentation? I
Sure.
might answer a lot of your questions. Okay, great. Bear with me as I get to the site plan. Okay, our team, as Martin had mentioned, analyzed the zoning ordinance, and we met with planning, engineering, economic development, city manager, and we looked at all the different alternatives, and at that point in time, based on some of the things that we were looking to do on the site, we just felt that the PUD was the vehicle to use to go through the zoning process on this. We feel that we meet the qualification standards, as was mentioned by Giffords-Webster. The ordinance calls for 1 of the 8 to be met, and we meet 3 of them, in our opinion. And with that, what we're trying to do is look at development patterns along 13 Mile, that's one of the criteria. There's existing multifamily projects to our west, existing multifamily projects to our east. This land, in relationship to those projects, it was desirable from the conversations we had with staff and the city in general to engage the land in between those multifamily projects. So this seemed to be a perfect fit. And so all 3 of those, objective 3, 4, and 8, all kind of fall into that framework of meeting those. Also, this is an excellent transition from 13 Mile to the single family, as opposed to some other type of commercial zoning, which was mentioned in the traffic study portion of Giffords-Webster about having commercial and comparing it to commercial. So we just felt that this is based on the existing conditions that are along 13 Mile, that this is a perfect transition and a perfect fit to engage that land where we're at and further to the east. Obviously, Martin talked about their experience and their passion for meeting the needs of the community, not just for the Chaldean community, but for other needs. And affordable housing or workforce housing is not only something that's critical for communities like Farmington Hills, but it's been discussed all over the state of Michigan. So this is going to meet a need here, and it's also going to help just in general with the overall community in the state. From the design of the project, as we've discussed, we're proposing state-of-the-art units. Alexander Bogarts does tremendous amount of multifamily design, and we bring a lot of experience to it, and the units that we've designed for this are, as I said, latest technology, state-of-the-art. We're proposing 60 of the units, and they're going to range the 1-bedrooms between 624 square feet to 660 square feet. Our 2-bedroom units, which we're proposing 40, are going to be around 816 square feet. We took great care with the design of this project, looking at respecting our neighbors, what's going on around us, as to how we design not only the architecture but the site. We wanted to blend, as I mentioned, the development with what's going on along 13 Mile. We wanted to retain as much of the natural features on the site as we could. We looked at curb cuts and the best location for curb cuts. Obviously, this project immediately wants to align with the curb cut to the north, which it does into the single-family sub. We listened to the concerns of the fire marshal. He had looked at this early on before he wrote his review letter, and he was talking about 2 means of egress into the site. So we provided an emergency access that comes over, I don't know, my pointer is not picking up, but over on the right-hand side, you can barely see it. We're proposing the emergency access out onto 13 Mile. We understand the concern about trying to minimize curb cuts onto 13 Mile, but when we develop this project in terms of managing the project, it's very important for us to do that, and by forcing us to link driveways with adjacent properties, that gives up some of our management ability in terms of the project. And natural features, there's a number of trees on the site, but what we try to do is maintain all along the eastern property line, the western property line, and along the southern property line where we're adjacent to our single family, as many of those trees as possible, as well as along 13 Mile. They act as a great buffer to that adjacent single-family. And on those other single-family lots, there's a lot of trees as well. So there's a good consistency of the natural features. We have very minimal lot coverage. We're only at 13.6% in terms of our lot coverage. And one of the critical things for the project was open space and maximizing that open space. And we did this by designing our 2.5-story buildings. You can see that in the rendering here. The 2.5-story buildings have three different critical things to them. One of them is that by adding more density to the center of the building, it minimizes the footprint on the site, which opens up the site to more green space. It also allows us to do the park area that's in the middle of the site. The other thing is it creates a lot more interest in the architecture. When you have variations in the roof line from the 2-story to the 3-story, along with the other detailing that's in the building, that creates a lot of interest rather than having an all 3-story building or an all 2-story building. And then finally, the 2.5-story building, it relates to not only the other multifamily projects that are along 13 Mile Road, but the single family. A lot of the single family is 2-story. Some of the multifamily that's out there is a combination of 2- and 3-story. So it meets all of those criteria from the standpoint of how it relates to the community and what it does for the site by opening up the amount of green space on the site. We talked about the parking and how general parking standards are the 1.6 to 1.8. The fire marshal's letter, we will sit down and meet with him and go through the architecture and the site and make sure that we've addressed all of his concerns as we move through this process. Traffic, we did some traffic analysis and looked at the number of cars that are currently on 13 Mile, and there's minimal traffic compared to a lot of the other major arteries, but we will be providing a traffic study as part of our future PUD submission and site plan approval submission. The building height, we did show a dimension on the initial package that was submitted, but the way we looked at building height is we're averaging this building along with the interest of the architecture. The 2 stories are about 25 feet of height. The center 3-story is about 35 feet of height. When you average those two, we're right in the 30-foot allowable height. We are a little bit over in terms of some 5 inches. That's another one of the relief factors for the PUD that we're going to be looking for. But we feel that we're right in that building height criteria. The density in the RC3 versus the RA1, density is a relative term. When we look at the density on the site, we look at a number of influencing factors. Does the project fit the site? Is there enough green space and open space? Have the natural features been respected? Is the massing in the building and the scale appropriate to the site and what's going on around it? Does it relate to the land around it? Is there enough parking on the site and enough open space? When we designed this site, we looked at it in relationship to the single family as well as the overall composition of the site. And we're really looking at the single family down here. This building we turned on end so that the minimal end, 2-story end, is facing the single family. That's at about a 50-foot dimension. Where the building has been turned longer, where you get a combination of the 2-story, 3-story, 2-story, we increase that setback to some 65 feet. So now between the existing single family homes in the back of that building, we're some 130 feet. On our easterly and our westerly buildings, we're 50 feet of setback, and on our northerly, we're 50 to a future 60-foot right-of-way. So to the single family to the north, we've got the road right-of-way, and then the single-family home are about 190 feet to that single family. So we looked at what's going on around us, and we designed the site appropriately. And in addition to the two items of relief that were brought up, which is parking and the other item, we were looking from the standpoint of the woodland ordinance to ask for some relief regarding the tree replacement. Obviously, this is an affordable housing project. It's looking at different sources of funding, and one of the objectives for workforce housing, available housing, is to really look at the costs of the project, try and keep the costs at a minimum so that the rents can be in the range that they want to be. Trying to cope with price and the cost of tree replacement, that's going to be a burden on the project financially. So that is another reason why we went PUD, to ask for relief from that. This project, as was mentioned, is a MISTA project. MISTA has already signed off on a preliminary site evaluation of it. And this is also going to be part of the 468 pilot program for MISTA. So those are four of the items as to looking at relief for the project. So in answer to your question in a long around way, those are why we're going for a PUD. To just go with a straight zoning, it doesn't work for us because of that. And we believe that we're bringing a very special project to the community and think that not only do we qualify for the PUD, but the PUD is a perfect fit for a very unique project like this. It's not a standard multifamily project that would work with a standard multifamily zoning. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? For the architect? Barry?
You indicated that some of the buildings were going to be approximately 35 feet, and some are going to be 25 feet. What's building number 3 going to be, the one along the property line? That better be a 25-footer.
No, what I was saying is that and by the way, I didn't show you this rendering. It's in your packet. This is our entrance into the project.
I'm also concerned about the entrance into the project. As you stated, it's 190 feet to the next house across the street.
Correct.
What is your setback, 25 feet, 35 feet to 50 feet?
No, all of our setbacks for every building is a minimum of 50 feet.
Okay.
The building
I'm concerned about the building number 3, which is going to be 50 feet from the lot line. But you indicated that different buildings are going to have different heights. And you said some of them are going to be 25 feet and some are going to be 35 feet.
No.
Each building is going to have.
I'll explain it again. If you look at the rendering, all of the buildings are the same. On the ends of the buildings, they're 25 feet,
Right.
2 stories. The center of the building is 35 feet. So they're all the same.
Oh, they're all the same.
Right, and we did that for economy from the standpoint of construction and costs, but also, as I said, there's a tremendous amount of aesthetic value to it as well by varying that roof height.
Mark, did staff agree with how you calculated the height for each building?
We didn't really talk about that with staff.
So right now, we would probably like to know that you're in agreement with staff on how you're calculating the height, given that the fact you're saying there's a few inches that you may need a variance on as it relates to this project. That's why this PUD makes sense.
Right.
So that's fine. I understand what you're doing. You're doing averaging. You're showing height,
Correct.
size, and then the lower level and averaging.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, we're saying 50% of the building is 25 feet, 50% of the
Right.
building is 35. On average, it's 30 feet.
30 feet.
It's
Right.
30 feet if you want to micro down to 30 feet, 5 inches, so
And the
yes.
only thing I'm saying is that I would hope that you would get with whoever planning or whatever, there's agreement in terms of how that calculation is made, and that's agreeable.
another reason for the PUD. It's, you know, we bring the project to the community. Obviously, we're biased. We think it's a beautiful project, and we think that's a reasonable way to measure building height. So my understanding is it's an agreement between the team and the developer and the community, and that would be one of the items that we would want to work to agree on.
Right, I'm just saying that may not be an item if they look at it, like you look at it and say, no, you're good, you're within the limit of that district, whatever. But there has to be some sort of discussion about agreed upon method of measuring that building since you have varying heights for each building.
Okay.
Any questions, further questions for the proponent?
Just a quick question. So you said that the design is state of the art. In what way? Is it the sustainability or materials?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of
You said in your presentation that your design, these units are state of the art.
Yeah, I was talking about the floor plans and the design.
Oh, okay.
And having designed many, many units to design units that are smaller, but still have all of the amenity of a larger unit, that takes a special talent, and that's been incorporated into this. And to design a facade like you see right here, that is something that from a cost standpoint is going to be good for the project, but also we believe is going to be a beautiful addition to the community.
Good?
Good.
Thank you very much. Very good presentation. Now it's back to the commission. I'd be curious to know whether Eric, you or Joe kind of give a overview of the PUD process. If this were to go forward, what are we looking at in terms of a process?
Want me to do that? Go. Right, so if you were to grant preliminary qualification, they would come back for final PUD approval. And they can do that in one of two ways. We've done this both ways with a lot of PUDs over the last few years. They could either come back for concurrent site plan approval with their final PUD, or they could come back for final PUD and then return to us for final site plan after going to council and getting the PUD approved there. But at any rate, when they come back to you for final PUD, you hold a public hearing at that point. And when you make your recommendation to council, be it up or down, they will then go to council, and council has the final approval authority over the PUD. If council approves the PUD, then there is a negotiation over a PUD agreement, and then if they've still got to come back for final site plan approval, they would do that after the agreement was signed. If they've already got their site plan approval because they did it concurrent, they would then move on to engineering review at that point.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to comment on my issues with this. I think there's lots of issues with this PUD. The first is when we talk about item E2, where it's compatible with existing or planned uses. The 3 lots on each side are still RA1. I don't consider that compatible. The multifamilies that are on both ends, Baptist Manor and the condos, are both ranches. They're not multi-story. So in a way, it's not compatible with those. Item E4, to provide alternative uses for parcels, to provide a transition and buffers to residential areas. Right now is RA1. It is a great residential buffer, or a great buffer to residential. This is actually creating a more higher density between all the RA1s, and now we're going to have 2 or 3 RA1 parcels on each side of this that are stranded. They're going to be between multi-uses. You'll have 3 properties on each side that are not the same as the others. And that brings down to the item 8, to bring redevelopment around. There are a lot of properties in this city from years ago where single properties were surrounded by multi-use apartments. We've seen one on 8 Mile. There was trying to put apartments in there a couple years ago. It's too small to do. There's another one on 12 Mile at Orchard Lake, a single house. They had trouble selling it because it's surrounded by RC3. It's the only house. In this case, we're stranding 3 properties that are surrounded by multi-use or multifamily at that point. So I think it's incompatible with that for the future development of those other properties. And they're gonna be stranded and have to have another RC3 type go in, and they're gonna be too small to do so.
Eric, could you bring up the plan that shows the 3 properties that Steve's referencing, or will be stranded?
It's on one of the last pages.
Yeah. Just so everybody, and just point out.
I've got to switch back over to this.
And Joe, what was the, so what's the expected density under RA1, single-family residential? How many units? How many single-family detached homes?
Under RA1, 13.
13, ballpark?
Yep.
13?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Real quickly.
Yeah, back to you. I just
You
want-
know, if we're looking at RC3, the whole thing's got to be RC3, not 3 parcels in the middle of a bunch of RA1s. And that's why I'm going back to the zoning, because if they, you know, in my mind, this is a bit to get around the zoning, because if they tried to rezone it, it would be a spot zone. And this seems to be a way to get around the spot zoning of an RC3 in the middle of RA1s.
Okay. Steve, what are the 3 properties you were talking?
There's 3, there's one that's further out,
Bless you.
Joe or Eric. It's page 9. It's on page 9 of our pamphlet.
So if this is the area, then that's the house, that's a house,
Yeah, there's 3 to each side.
and then there's a house here, and a house over there.
Can you
So,
pull that up, Kurt?
There you go,
Right,
yeah,
oh,
that was it.
no,
that
You
was it.
just had it. So there's 4 on the one side, 3 on the one.
Can I just comment to that?
yes,
Yeah, just one second. Eric, could you put the aerial back so we see the aerial? Okay, thank you. And leave it there. Mr. Mata?
Oh, thank
Go ahead.
Yeah. The 3, the parcels or the homes that are adjacent on the west are all owned by the Baptist Manor. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. And so we have met with the Baptist Manor and their owners who were, you know, initially very supportive of the project. And they had talked about eventually trying to redevelop those parcels as well. And, you know, so that's on the west side of the property, which is, I think, what you're addressing. So just to be clear, those properties are owned by the Baptist Manor, so it's continuous to the development that they have to the left there.
Have you talked to your neighbors to the south?
We did talk to the east? South? Is that?
Yeah, we tried to,
Tom? This is.
Tom Haji, Chaldean Community Foundation Director. Yes, we've, Tia Brockway tried to connect us with the homeowners association there. We're trying to meet with them as well, to bring them up to speed on our project, but they've
Do
been
you think they're aware of
unresponsive.
the project, or?
To make them aware of what we're doing, to share. That's what we did with Detroit Baptist Manor. We met with them, shared our plans. and
Okay.
They were very receptive.
But the single family to the
Yes, to the
south?
south, we're still attempting to meet with
Okay.
them. Yeah.
Okay, it's good to know. Steve?
Got one more.
Yeah.
Baptist Manor came to us 3 years ago? Was that a PUD that we declined? I remember it getting rejected. I can't remember if it was rejected because of if it was a PUD application or a rezoning application. I can't remember which one it was, but I know it got declined.
I believe they brought that up as well. They brought that up to us. I think they were going for rezoning.
I think they went for RC3 and we declined that at that time to rezone it. And this is pretty much doing the same thing.
don't know if it's the same project, no.
Yeah.
Well,
The same
right.
project.
Right, it's not the same project, but
Nor is, I don't think it had the same intention. I think it would be, you know, maybe you should review that because it was a total
Discussion through
different
the chair,
project.
please.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So we're all up here, we're airing our opinion, but the board acts as one, as a whole, so everybody will have individual views, so we're just gonna thrash it out. So is that something staff, you're aware of a rezoning Baptist Manor initiated, or does that sound familiar? It wasn't a
Sound
PUD.
familiar.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, this, I mean, it was before my time, certainly. I mean, it seems logical that if they were planning on expanding the existing Baptist Manor facilities, that they would have went for a higher density zoning there.
Okay, so the issue before the commission right now is, in light of our ordinance, is whether or not they meet one of those criterion points in our ordinance that this would qualify for PUD consideration and go through a process. Mr. Stimson's made an argument that this would not necessarily be consistent. I would also like to see, do you have the zoning master plan map that you could put up, show the east and west side and the south of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's all one color on the map. It's,
Yeah, I mean, it's all RA1.
it's all,
So that's the zoning. You get the master plan?
I don't think we have future land use on the slide deck here. No.
I'd be curious in seeing that.
it is on the last page of our, or second to last page of our letter. So if you look at page 8 of the Giffords-Webster letter, you can see the master plan designations.
Right. So I want the
So
public.
this is surrounded by a single-family designation. When you actually get over to the existing Baptist Manor facility, it moves to multifamily. You've got quasi-public and community facilities kind of to the east and west along 13 Mile, but it's all single-family in this area.
I have a question. I think this question.
Danielle?
I think this is mostly to us.
Yeah.
Well, weren't we just having a conversation, and haven't we been talking for months in this area, 13 between Middle Belt and Middle Belt and Orchard Lake, that it could use redevelopment? It seems like this is, we talk about how what we're butt up against are if the properties aren't changing hands and the people that have them aren't willing to redevelop them, then it will be slow to get our 10-year plan into place. The renderings seem to match what we envision changing kind of some of the landscape too. I do understand though Steve's point of well, currently we have ranch, but aren't we supposed to be having our future vision hat on to kind of look at how it will get us there?
Well, we're supposed to look at it in view of our ordinance and see if it makes sense. Now, to your point, their criterion number 8, to bring about redevelopment of sites where an orderly change of use is determined to be desirable. And I think that goes to your point.
Yes, yes.
That's one of 8. They need to at least have one point that is consistent with our ordinance. Any other comments, questions? Barry?
Yeah, I was curious as to what was going further on in the west, because on the other side of the Baptist Manor, we have those taller buildings over there, that the condos that I think Schaefer built years ago. And these look about the same height as those.
These are probably shorter.
Huh? These are shorter?
Lower probably than what Schaefer did. Yes, Mark?
And I understand Steve's viewpoint too, also, because I just, finding out that Baptist Manor owns the next 3 lots over, that makes, it was 4 lots. That one lot's landlocked. There's no way to get to it. There's no street access.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, it's probably owned by the house that butts the,
No, yeah, it's owned by, they said it was owned, they're saying it was owned by Baptist Manor. Those
Yeah.
4 lots are Baptist Manor lots. That makes me feel a little better. My only concern, and that's why I was drilling you on the height is and you made the comment that you haven't talked to the folks behind you. I mean, that's where if anybody's going to be upset, it's going to be the people behind this unit. I understand that this is along 13-mile road. These houses that are over there have been up for sale for I don't know how many years. And no one seems to want to buy them. I don't object to the project you're talking about. The other thing is that I don't know if the question was raised, is that if this is a PUD, they still are RC1 zone. No, RA1. They still stay RA1 zone. It's just you're using a RC3 density.
That component of it, correct.
But you know what's going on to the east, though?
Well, I just want to
Aren't those houses
revisit the 3 points in our meetings with staff, and that was reiterated by Commissioner Ware. When we met with staff, one of the key things for this and why we moved towards the PUD are all of these issues. And one of the things that was key was looking at activating this area that's currently not being activated. And the fact that Baptist Manor owns those 3 pieces, wanted to do something with it. We looked at this as not spot zoning or putting something in where you can't develop either side of it. The 3 parcels to the west of us are the same size as ours. So someone, either us or Baptist Manor, could come in and develop a similar or compatible type of project to what's there. You mentioned the Schaefer project down the street. That's very compatible in terms of and comparable to our project in terms of height. It's 2.5 story, 3 on the rear, 2 to 2.5 on the front. And then several of the buildings, larger buildings in Baptist Manor are 2-story buildings. They do have the ranches right at the edge. That's just the way they designed that. We do a lot of senior housing projects, and we have a mix of larger buildings and smaller ranch buildings depending on the product that the people want. That's just the way that is. But we're looking at a total activation of all of this section of 13 Mile and trying to do something that really brings vibrancy to that area and community benefit to the community, but especially with this unique project. This isn't just a senior housing project. This is a project that is going to deal with a number of key issues for a number of different people. So we believe that we meet those 3 criteria for all of those reasons. We're compatible with architecture, densities, scale, and we're trying to do something that we understood from our meetings with the community and staff of what a vision might be for that area, even though the master plan hasn't addressed that yet.
So I just want to say that I understand if you try to convert that to an RC3, that would be spot zoning because you have RA1 on either side of it, and it would be kind of all by its lonesome. If it was next to a higher density, if you had the last 4 lots that were next to Baptist Manor, then that would be easier to do a zoning change. I understand why you need to go do the PUD. That doesn't bother me so much.
Right.
Okay?
And to the east, I just wanted to answer your other question.
The other
To the
question
east,
is,
there-
maybe
yeah,
you can answer it, are you looking at expanding to the east also?
There's availability to the east. And there's,
Well, I know you can only have so much money. Yeah. I understand that concept.
Sir, if I may, just, I think 2 of those 4 parcels are actually up for sale. And we've had some discussions, but again, we just need to know, get some indication whether or not we'd be able to move forward. And I guess we could always look at additional parcels. We have spoken to the neighbor. He initially had some interest, not as of late. And even in our development in Sterling Heights, it was 1 home, and then we eventually bought 3 additional homes. That's how we developed that property for our community center. So I will also tell you that the project we have in Sterling Heights has started with our project, but there's been almost $40 million in new investments that are now being planned in that area because of new development.
All right, thank you.
Question for staff. I mean, in terms of building coverage, so we're looking at 13%, a little over 13% building coverage under this proposal. Is that similar to what we expect if there was 4 or 13 single-family homes?
So under RA1, your maximum lot coverage is 35%.
35 a lot, right? So,
So if you put 13 homes in there, you'd be north of, overall, you'd be north of 13%.
And I guess to the city attorney, so this is a very deliberative process. PUDs don't become PUDs and active PUDs until there's an assigned agreement. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So you go through qualifications, site plan approval, whatever, work out all the details in the agreement, but until both sides agree to the agreement, it's not a PUD.
That's correct.
And there's no liability per se to the city. Both sides have to agree when they enter into a PUD. I mean, if we can't come to an agreement on a PUD, there's,
Yeah, I guess the way I'd answer that is the PUD is a optional form of development, and they have to meet the standards of your ordinance, which you and city council get to decide whether or not that's the case.
okay.
And, you know, once you agree with the plan, then on top of that, there's an agreement that documents the plan.
Right.
Yep.
So I think compelling arguments have been made on both sides by Steve, Danielle, talking about it. We do have an ordinance that's in place. It has a criteria that's in place. And the question is, did they present a plan that meets that, meets the criteria in some fashion? They've identified 3 points they think are compelling as it relates to our ordinance. And we have to be fair in enforcing our ordinance. If we don't think they've met the standards that's in our ordinance, then our answer should be pretty clear. But if we think they have, and it makes sense, then there'll be a motion to move forward. So, any further discussion on the application?
I just have one, just clarification.
Nanji?
Yeah, he just mentioned that, he said most of it is just senior. Is this a senior development? Is it an income,
no.
age? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. So it's affordable,
Correct,
affordable, for open to all people.
correct.
Okay, good. Okay, so I think we got a lot of good information. So what is your pleasure, Commission?
Everyone just don't jump up all at once, right? All right. I'll take a shot.
Okay, Barry?
Okay.
Oh, who went first? You want,
Yeah.
Barry? Okay, Barry?
All right.
Make a motion.
I move to make a preliminary finding that PUD 1, 2023 dated May 18, 2023, submitted by Martin Matta, qualifies for the plan unit development option under section 34-3-20.2A through D of the zoning chapter. It is further determined that the proposal meets at least one of the objectives as outlined in section 34-3.20.2 big E, small I through VII, and I will note that in a second. And it be made clear to the applicant that the final granting of the PUD plan and contact requires approval by City Council after recommendation by the Planning Commission. The proposed plan preliminary meets the following qualification standards of section 34-3-20-2 EI. And the ones that I am going to pick are section IV4 to provide alternative uses for parcels which can provide transition buffers to residential areas, and VIII to bring about redevelopment of sites where an orderly change of use is determined to be desirable. And that we add on to that.
Okay, before you go on, Barry, to be clear, what have you picked? You picked II, what else?
IV and VIII. I didn't pick II.
Okay, you didn't pick II, you picked IV?
You only need one. I picked the two that actually most,
So IV is 4, right?
4 and 8, yeah.
4 and 8.
Let's use the numbers so we understand each other.
Thank you. Because I'm hearing, when he's saying B, I'm hearing B, and I'm looking
Me
where.
too.
So 4 and 8.
4 and 8, how's that? You make-
Okay, everybody
makes
got
you
that?
happy,
4 and 8,
makes
thank you. Okay.
And the other thing that I think that according to Giffords Webster, there was another requirement at the end, and that, I had it a second ago, was in part 7, was to permit multifamily at a 3C3 density and permit reduction in parking from 200 spaces to 160.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Want that?
We stopped.
We don't need
That's
that
for
right
the later.
now, yeah.
That's for later?
We need a site plan.
Forget I said
Different
it.
step.
The only other comment I would make is I would highly recommend you talk to the owners of the homes that are on the back in the RA1 district, that this will be abutting, that you have, talk to them, let them know what you're doing. And this is not part of the motion, just saying that just talk to them and work things out with them, because if anybody's going to complain, it's going to be those folks. Yeah, I know you tried, but you got to do it, okay?
Okay, so you made the motion to qualify based on 4 and 8 in the ordinance. Do I have a second?
I'll support it.
Supported by John. Moved by Barry, supported by John, based on criteria 4 and 8. All in favor say, excuse me, any discussion on the motion? Steve? You said
I've stated my position.
Said you're very well. Anybody else have any comments on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose?
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. Congratulations. Continue the process. We'll look forward to seeing you again and a plan, and good luck. John?
Mr. Manna, where is your development in Sterling Heights?
Where?
Where?
On Van Dyke and Utica Road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good evening. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we could just do it after the meeting.
Denied.
Okay, the second item tonight is 4B, amend Plan Unit Development 5, 1993. Location is 36455 and 36555 Corporate Drive. The proposal is to amend the PUD to permit signage not presently permitted. The action requested is to set for public hearing of the Planning Commission. And so we'll get an overview, and the applicant is and owner is the Farmington Corporate Investors LLC and the Farmington Hills 5 Corporate Investors LLC. Joe?
Right. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that there should have been a printed copy of the letter that says revised 6/15/2023 at your position on the die. So use that version of the letter and not the one that was provided in the packet earlier this
Okay.
week.
Yep, this here revised.
And if anybody doesn't have that, let us know, but you should all have it. Do you have a copy to give to the?
Okay.
Oh, there's.
Yeah, I got a copy. She had mine.
Revised.
Here, I got one.
Okay.
Revised?
Yeah, here you go.
Anybody?
Just that one.
Okay, got revised?
Okay, we all have the right document?
Revised.
Yeah.
Good. Steve?
Real quickly, Tom and I were just having a discussion.
Sidebar 3.
A sidebar, because in the past, sometimes we've had the question about whether it's a minor or a major, and Tom was explaining it to me why that question's not in front of us.
Okay, thank you. Tom, do you want to?
I guess I was
Yeah,
going
for
to
the
wait
benef-
until Joe, but.
You can, go ahead.
Okay, so.
Get it out of the way.
Tom will tell us, our attorney will tell us whether this is a major change or a major change or a minor change as it relates to the ordinance and looking at amendments to the PUD. Tom?
So just to be clear, Steve leaned over and said, do we have to set it for a public hearing? We do minor amendments. And my comment, assuming we talk about it a little bit later, was this kind of feels like a minor thing, right? It's signage and you've, moved buildings and stuff like that. The thing here, and I think Joe and Eric are maybe going to talk a little bit about it, is the sign package, which, you know, you're going to talk about whether or not you like it, is inconsistent with the written language of the PUD agreement, which, to our collective knowledge, you've never ignored before and have always said you need to amend it. And then the other aspect is they really kind of are looking for variances, which, to our collective knowledge, you've never used the minor amendment process to say, we're going to sort of act like the ZBA or the city council and just say, you can have bigger signs. So when you do stuff that changes the plan and you call it a minor amendment, it meets ordinance requirements. It just is inconsistent with the plan. You know what I mean? So when they say a minor amendment that doesn't affect area or density, these are kind of affecting the area of a sign or the number of signs. So, you know, we struggled with this at our office for the last week, basically saying it's kind of signs. I mean, you know, but we kind of collectively, after talking with Joe and Eric and seeing what we've done on this property and every other property with the PUD, couldn't find an instance where we've said close enough if it's an actual not compliant with the ordinance or with the agreement itself. Having said that, you know, you're the planning commission, so you get to decide where you're going to go with this, and if you want to hear what the, you know, what the review is, obviously you should.
Right, and that raises a question. So under a PUD, the 1993 PUD, a few years ago, does ZBA have jurisdiction?
ZBA does not have jurisdiction.
Does not have jurisdiction. So, okay, so we're at the right place, but I appreciate you clarifying that. Kind of my non-legal view on mostly questions of setting public hearing. I'm always one to say, set the public hearing in terms of due process and whatever. Always kind of set a public hearing, but we always take our counsel from the city attorney on whether we not set a public hearing, but when a public hearing is requested.
So Joe should go over the sign stuff and, you know, how it does or doesn't meet the ordinance or the agreement, and then if you want to talk some more, that's fine.
Right.
Thanks, Tom. Joe?
We'll consider this investigating the origins of Tom's very helpful comments here. So what we have is a PUD on a site with underlying zoning of OS4. And we're all pretty familiar with this because a lot has happened in this PUD over the last few years. This is a 26-acre portion. It used to be two buildings with, they're kind of like diagonal to each other, and then they came in with a plan to fill in the middle and make it one building. So we have, generally speaking, other office development around this, and then I-696 is to the south. So they're proposing to ask for more extensive signing for the new Comerica office on this site than is generally permitted in the ordinance, and I'll get into detail on that in a little bit. We do have the current sign language from the PUD agreement. The original, one of the reasons you got an updated letter is that the original letter had the original sign language, which was actually amended, I think last year actually, and we just didn't have the most current language in there, so we updated this to have that current language in there. So that's what's in front of you if you're using that revised letter. And I don't really need to read that in this circumstances. You can go through it if you need to. But what they're proposing is 4 wall signs, one of which is on the north side of the building, 3 of which are on the south side. So under our conventional sign provisions in our ordinance, a 100-square-foot sign is permitted on each street-facing facade, which would be one on the north side and one on the south side. So originally 2 buildings joined by an addition. The sign allowance would be 1 sign on the north side and 1 sign on the south side. And what they're proposing is 1 sign on the north side and 3 on the south side. So on the south side of the building, you'd have 2 signs kind of up on the original buildings, and then 1 on the portion that joined the 2 buildings. All 4 wall signs are 97.2 square feet. So even though each individual sign meets that 100 square foot limit, they're in excess of that collectively on the south side of the building. And when we look at the freestanding signs, they've got 3 freestanding signs proposed on the plan. One of those replaces an existing freestanding sign. It's along Corporate Drive. The 2 signs on Corporate Drive are 6 feet tall. They're 9.1 square feet. That's compliant with the OS4 maximum, which is 6 feet and 32 square feet. They've got 734 feet of frontage there, and when you have more than 300 feet of frontage, you get an extra sign that can't exceed 50% of the permitted sign area. They've got 2 signs there. They're both less than 50%, not just one of them. So that second sign is permitted on that side. Over on the other side of the building, along 696 is where that third sign is proposed. That sign is 25.75 feet tall with a sign area of 31.84 square feet. So the area is okay, but the height of the sign is non-compliant with the OS4 standards. So there are 3 things going on here that are not compliant with the typical sign standards for the OS4 district. 3 wall signs on the south facade where 1's permitted. 291 square feet of wall sign on the south facade where 100 square feet is permitted. And then a 25.75 foot height for the sign along I-696 where 6 feet is permitted. So those are the 3 deviations from ordinance standards that are being requested at this point. And as Tom was saying, that is not covered by the existing agreement. And the Zoning Board of Appeals is not an optional route here because we're in a PUD. Any questions or anybody seeking clarification on what we're talking about?
Joseph?
The acoustics suck in this room. So I'm not sure I heard everything you say. So I'll just, the way I understand it is the front is A-okay, even though they were asking us for something they didn't need to ask us for it. Got that right?
The
Front being the north.
The Corporate Drive side of the building, everything's fine there. Yep.
Okay. On the back, they're only supposed to have 1 sign.
Correct.
However, they're on a freeway. 1 sign is clearly aimed at people headed west, and 1 sign is clearly aimed at people traveling east.
How fast are they going on that expressway?
I'm going 90 in my,
You know, so
economist.
I don't have an issue with that. But then there's a 3rd sign in between? And is that the one that has a height problem, or?
No, the one that with a height problem is the freestanding sign close to the freeway.
One on the expressway.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
the
one
one in
on the
between-
expressway.
Yeah,
The one shown in the rendering here.
yeah,
So
that one.
in other words, I have no problem with the fact that they've got 1 for east traffic, 1 for west traffic. The one in between, but on the building, not so sure about. Okay, and then the orange circle as opposed to the blue circle is a freestanding sign. And how have we treated, do we have any other freestanding signs like that along the freeway? It seems like there used to be one at some finance place that was then another finance place that was then another finance place, but I don't remember it being very tall.
Right, I can't recall another one offhand.
No, but there is an existing.
Over by Middle
one
Belt.
in the agreement, so.
Right.
I mean, there's the possibility to build one under the agreement as it's written. I think it's 70 square feet and oriented towards the highway.
So are we deciding whether or not this is minor or major?
Tom, do you want to say something on that?
I guess from our perspective, I want to be clear that when we use that word minor amendment, it is followed by language that says that does not require a deviation from area or density. This does. So you can read that phrase to say, by definition, it's not a minor amendment because it requires that. The last time they were here, we had this issue about building height.
So,
So,
given it's here, you've determined this is not a minor amendment.
I would say you have never called a deviation from an ordinance a minor amendment
Right.
ever.
So it's here, before it was a minor amendment or whatever, staff could have just approved it?
No, they would have brought it to you. You could have done it without a public hearing and all that. But in this case, even though it seems like it's not a huge deal, you have an ordinance that's not met and you're not meeting the written PUD agreement. So you've never called anything like that a minor amendment, even though it's not the biggest change.
Well, when you talk about the area size, are we talking size of buildings and what's been the history of that interpretation? Is it related to signs?
Anything, to our knowledge, every sign on here complies with the ordinance. So you've never done what you're being asked to do tonight. Council has, because that's the process. So your PUD process is city council. You make recommendations to city council, they approve it, right? That's the process. There's an option in here for you to make minor amendments to the plan, but they don't require deviations to the ordinance.
Does council see the plan, make minor amendments? Does council make that call, or is that planning
Sure,
commission?
yeah, because that's the process, right?
No. I'm talking about a minor amendment, an amendment to the plan. Will they see it? If we said.
They would not see a minor amendment, no.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we said tonight, nah, I think that that interpretation related to a building height, building whatever, I see this as a minor thing. It's a sign on a building. I mean, is that?
so acoustics suck here.
Huh?
I thought I heard that there was a height issue.
There is a height issue.
There is.
Yeah.
But then
On a sign.
Yeah, these
on the
signs.
sign, yeah, but I just heard you say, I thought I heard you say that there wasn't a height issue.
No, I did not say that.
No, he said it was a height issue on a sign, not a height issue to a building, height issue to a sign.
These signs don't meet your ordinance. You've never, as a planning commission, said, close enough. You've never done that.
So you.
And more importantly, they don't meet the written PUD agreement, which you've also never said close enough to.
So the written PUD agreement references
The exact number of signs.
signs? Okay.
And size.
So it's a no-brainer. We set up for public hearing.
Right.
I think
I
you're,
move we set
I
this
think
for
you're,
public hearing.
no, you got to hear from the
Gentlemen,
public.
Any other questions? This gentleman would like to speak?
probably rooting
Would like to
for him.
speak on behalf of this proposal?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Chris Kajoyan with the Kajoyan Companies on behalf of the owner of the property, 39400 Woodward Avenue in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, Suite 250. So we've been kind of told in our discussions this whole time with city staff that this would be treated as a minor amendment, or they would recommend so, because it's up to you guys. If it met the language in the PUD, we wouldn't be seeking an amendment to the PUD because it would be granted. It is signage that we're talking about. There's no building height issues. The connector that's being constructed, has been approved through the city. It's not any taller than the buildings or anything like that. And actually the signage that we're proposing on the freeway side of the building was there previously. So we had Mercedes-Benz, Harman, and Dell. All three had signs on the building for many years. So that has not changed. It's just now we have a new tenant for the building, and the connector that's going to connect into one large building is serving as their only entrance to the building for guests and employees. They want the signage there, as well as the freeway visibility. The sign along the freeway has not been there previously, but is what they want to add. The height of the sign is due to the vegetation in the MDOT right-of-way, which in this picture, it's not there because they want to show how tall the sign is in perspective. But if you go by, not right now because of all the construction, they've clear-cut everything, but if you go by in a year or two, that vegetation could be 10 or 12 feet if it's not maintained, and we're not allowed to cut that back. We're not allowed to touch it. It's MDOT's property. So that's why they want this tall sign highlighting Comerica. Just to back up a little bit, this is Comerica's Michigan operations headquarters. So they're consolidating 3 facilities from around the area into this one 340,000 square foot facility that they're very proud to move to Farmington Hills. So we're helping them get through this process. We're doing their build out right now. We're all very excited about it, as I know the city is as well. So we're really hoping to be able to represent that they're here in Farmington Hills when people are driving by on 696, when they're recruiting talent into this city to work in these buildings. We want people driving by to know exactly where they are and be able to highlight that for the community. So I'm here to answer any questions. I think it'd be great if we could kind of talk through the issues before we try to determine if it's minor or major, but that's not up to me. But we very much see this as a minor amendment to the PUD, and that's the conversation that we've had with city staff up to this point.
Well, I think we're gonna set it for public hearing. We've determined it's an amendment, so we'll have a public hearing once we have a motion, and then we'll make a determination, and ours will be the final say on that issue. Or does that go?
It'll go to council for.
Go to council.
I probably would be able to do that one in one meeting at the council, hopefully.
Okay.
Because the agreement would just be changing numbers in the sign section.
Right.
Najee?
I have a question for you. Do they feel the signage on the buildings not good enough? You won't be able to see it from the highway? Because I've always seen signs on buildings from the highway.
Yeah, so depending on the time of the year, obviously in the winter, the trees don't have vegetation and.
Oh, even in summertime. I noticed in the Mercedes, I saw those signs on the building.
Yeah.
What's determining to have this sign on the highway? I just never seen one.
Yeah, so there are some a little bit further east. I'm trying to think, I think Farmers and Merchants has one. So there's a couple further east that do exist. Actually, on the campus as a whole, which is about a 140-acre campus, we are permitted one sign separately from this location. If you remember, probably 6 months ago, we were in for site plan approval for 2 new buildings totaling 300,000 square feet. Because those are set further back, it's really a need for a Comerica-like company coming into that location to have that signage. So the kind of precedent for these freeway signs is there. In other communities as well, we've built, I think, 70 buildings in Auburn Hills alone. Probably half a dozen or maybe more than that have freeway signs to, obviously just show off where the companies are and that they're in those communities.
It just looks odd to me. I've seen other signs, but they've been further back towards the building. This just seems like it's like in the middle, almost close to the shoulder of the highway. It just seems odd.
It's still far enough away from the freeway. I mean, it's within our property line. It's away from MDOT, but the buildings are set back further from the freeway because of the parking lot and the connector connecting the 2 buildings. So Comerica's desire is to have, great visibility for those folks driving by. It's, a couple 100,000 cars a day driving through there.
Any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion?
No, Steve has one.
Oh, Steve.
I'm ready to make the motion.
Thank you very much, sir.
So I was going to say, yeah, I think these signs make sense, but we'll set it for a public hearing, hopefully. I move that the proposed amendment to PUD 5 of 1993, submitted by Farmington Hills V Corp Investors LLC, dated May 18th, 2023, be set for public hearing for the Planning Commission's next available regular meeting agenda.
Second.
Kristen, second. Steve made the motion. Any conversation on the motion? My sense, this is a big piece of property. You gotta look at it in the context. It's facing 696, the expressway, and there's got to be ways that we can share with folks who's there, whatever, and let people know that Comerica's there. So I think this is a good thing, and I hope they are visible, so it helps them be successful in our city. With that, any other comments? Steve?
Yeah, Dale, just to comment, I mean, a lot of this is because now there's the connector, so technically they're one building. If there wasn't the connector, this wouldn't be as much of an issue because they'd get one on each building.
Right.
And they'd only be asking for the highway one, but because now there's the connector, it's all one building, so instead of 2 signs, they get one between 3 buildings.
Yeah, right.
So.
Joe, do you want to say something? And then
Yeah, I think what you have here is a situation where you have something that's physically minor but legally major.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess.
Bit of a conflict
That's the
of policy
That's the
and-
distinction, yeah.
Yeah, it's not in the agreement.
disproportionate.
Whether it's major or minor or whatever, it's not in the agreement, it's gotta be in the agreement. And then where we have to have a public hearing on it. Joe?
I'm pretty much going to say the same thing. I was going to say, I'm going to vote for this measure and recognize this as a major issue so that we are internally consistent with all the cases we've had in the past. It fits our precedent, even though by some other definitions, it's not a major thing.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. You're going to a public hearing. We'll keep you informed when it'll be. You know what's going to be, Eric, is the next month?
This one will be, I believe, July 20th would be the date.
Thanks for coming tonight. Thank you very much. Okay, next item, we have minutes. We have for consideration of approval, the May 18, 2023 special meeting minutes and the May 18, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve or any amendments to the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Kanji makes a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
Minutes, yes, for May 18th, 2023, and the special meeting on May 18th, 2023, regular meeting.
Thank you very much. John, seconds. Any comments, questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Minutes approved. Public comment. We have a couple folks in the audience. Any comments? Thank you for coming tonight. Fantastic. We love when our residents come in and observe their planning commission. Thanks for coming tonight. Commissioner comments. Joe, welcome back.
Well, thank you. Did you get my text?
I did not.
What?
I did.
I took a picture of mixed-use development in downtown Oslo, and I
You could text me. Text
and
me
I
now.
messaged it
You guys get it?
to you.
No,
No.
you sent all of us a text?
No, well, I didn't know if you sent it to everybody.
No, I just
You never
sent
got
it
it?
Uh-uh.
Might be on your phone.
No,
I'll share it with you.
Okay, yeah, no, I.
Maybe if I send it again, because now I'm in the US.
You
Yeah.
sent it from Norway.
Are you an iPhone?
Yeah.
That's what I thought, and I thought iPhones text on Wi-Fi. I thought you'd get it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, well, welcome back. Very,
That's right. I just wanted to announce that I have a very big event occurring on the 17th of June. It's my 50th wedding anniversary with my
that is.
beautiful wife, Cheryl.
That is.
Former First Lady.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say. It's my 50th wedding anniversary. May all the other married couples still married here.
50 is what, gold, is that
Golden,
golden?
yeah.
old, right?
Don't get him.
Jewelry, Julie's.
No, she's
Coin.
doing
With the
what she
Farmington Hills
wants. She's
coin.
going to Hawaii
Hawaii, okay.
with the kids and the grandkids.
Nice.
I'm going to,
Oh.
but I will be here for the meeting on the 20th.
Okay.
On behalf of
Tell
the-
Cheryl, congratulations on behalf of the planning commission.
Thank you.
Being with you for 50 years, it's got to be
It's
just
a major thing, right?
major accomplishment. Tanji, how you doing?
Doing fine,
Good.
enjoying starting the summer and just glad graduations and all that's over with. A lot of traveling. Everyone's out of town. I don't have family here, so I have to always travel out of state
Party at your house, huh?
Yeah.
anytime.
John?
No, no.
I'm good. Marissa?
Good.
Danielle? Kristen?
All set.
Steve? Thomas? Just in case, I didn't know. Okay. Motion to adjourn? John?
Second.
Danielle?
Yeah,
Second.
you're right.
All fair say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thank you very much. Okay.